Hello and welcome to episode 134 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, EV chargers outnumber gas stations 10-1 in Manhattan. Same ratio as rats to people.
Interesting. Nissan has finally released pricing information for their Ariya EV. Said a Nissan spokesperson, "We know James Whittingham has a Nissan LEAF, so we wanted to make sure the Ariya was out of his price range."
Canadian doctors expose blatant greenwashing by the Canada Gas Association. This after they turned to the left and coughed without being asked.
A former coal power plant has been selected as the site for a fusion energy project in the UK. The power source of the past meets the power source of the never?
All that and more on this edition of The Clean Energy Show. And also this week, Brian, we have the Tesla Semi has finally entered into production, if you can believe it. Pepsi, December 1st, so that's interesting. Porsche is going public. I didn't know they weren't. And how much space would solar panels take up to power the entire world? How was your trip to BC?
Yeah, it was great. So this is my first time on an airplane in about 6 years,
Oh
if
my.
you can believe it. Yeah, the planes were all full, pretty much full.
Really? Masked or
And,
unmasked?
I would say 5 to 10% masked. in
That's
the whole
it, on a
journey.
plane?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. So the restrictions in Canada just were lifted just at the start of the month, I think. And yeah, everyone's pretty much given up on it already.
Oh, brother.
But so far, I'm not sick, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, first time on an airplane, it was weird to go back on a plane. But yeah, I went to BC, went to Whistler for a family function. So we flew into Vancouver. And a couple of things. First of all, the Vancouver airport has these giant signs up about how they're going to be carbon neutral by 2030 at the Vancouver airport. They have a specific plan, I guess, to do that. I assume that doesn't include the airplanes.
I assume not. Maybe the toilets.
Yeah. A shuttle picked us up at the airport and drives us up to Whistler, which takes a couple of hours. But so you have to drive through Vancouver on the way to Whistler. Yeah, I just wanted to give an update because the last time I was in Vancouver was about 2 years ago, and we talked about it then on the podcast. And back then, 2 years ago, there were quite a few Teslas on the road in Vancouver. The number now is insane. Like there is so many Teslas on the street in Vancouver. I couldn't believe it. Within 2 minutes of driving out of the airport, I'd seen a dozen Teslas.
Wow. Wow.
And then it just continued the whole time, and including up to Whistler, because it's mostly people from Vancouver. But yeah, it was shocking. Like there were so many, I stopped counting almost immediately because it was too many. And I thought, well, I'm going to need some kind of comparison. So maybe I'll start counting BMWs and I'll, to get some sort of a sense. So this is not scientific or anything, and I didn't write down the numbers or anything, but I would guess there's 2 to 3 times more Teslas in Vancouver than there is BMWs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot harder to spot a BMW. And then I thought, okay, well, I've got more time to drive through. So I started counting Toyotas.
Yeah.
Because that's, obviously a very popular brand. And it looked kind of equal to me, like the same number of Toyotas as Teslas in Vancouver. That's how many there
Look
is.
out, Toyota.
Yeah. So again, that's not scientific. I didn't keep track. If anybody knows the actual numbers, but it's certainly going to be high in Vancouver, which is, this is the west coast of Canada. It's near Seattle. It's got a similar vibe to Seattle. The whole west coast of North America is, I assume, where there's the highest concentration of Teslas. But still, it was pretty darn shocking to see so many. And quite a few Mustang Mach-E's I saw as well.
Yeah, those are, I want to get to that in a minute, but there's actually seems to be fairly good supply of those. I know you're always saying, well, how many of these things are you going to make and when are you going to make them?
Yeah.
Ford seems to be coming through, so we'll get back to that in just a second. I can't believe it's been 2 years since you drove out in your Tesla. Like that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, time is I don't know. Time is meaningless in the pandemic. But
I wish I wasn't aging because I know it hasn't forgotten my body. It's aging quite well, thank you.
And then so once we were in Whistler, this is a mountain town, like a ski town, and it's not ski season yet, but they have these tramways you can take up the mountain, the what do you call it? Gondola.
Yeah.
And so they have one now that's called the peak-to-peak gondola. So you take the first one up the mountain and then you switch to the peak-to-peak gondola, which takes you from the peak of one mountain to the peak of another. And it was absolutely insane. This is apparently the longest span in the world of one of these gondolas. Like there's, the gondolas are held up by these poles you know, every split up against the thing. So there's a handful of support poles at each end, but then there's a massive span in the middle, which is you just spend 5 minutes on this one span of the cable. It was crazy. It seemed like it shouldn't exist.
Is that the one that was cut by vandals twice?
Yeah, I'm not sure. There was a news story in Canada a year or two ago about that. I'm not sure which one it was. Yeah.
But it was in Whistler. I think it was in Whistler.
Oh, it was. I couldn't remember where it was. Yeah.
So I went up in Banff National Park. I went up on one, which was kind of the one right near the town of Banff, which was nice view, but then you go back down. I went to the other one at Sunshine, and they had just started doing it. I guess the number of people doing it doubles every year, and I was on year 3, so it wasn't too crowded, but I imagine it is now. But it was a summertime thing to do where they just decided, hey, let's make some money in the summertime. And you go up in these mountain vistas, which are just full of wildflowers and just so peaceful and so stunning to just walk, to go for a hike for an hour around.
Yeah. I mean, there was a ton of tourists kind of spoiling it all, but aside from that, just absolutely.
If you could just poison them or something, just,
yeah. But the engineering feat of this gondola, like the peak to peak, it was just crazy.
How much did it cost? Because that'll tell you how much engineering went into it.
It's about $70 a person.
Oh, that's not bad. That seems like a typical gondola ride, actually.
Yeah.
I got my Nissan LEAF fixed, and we were talking about this last week, and it wasn't going well for James. Not well at all.
Yeah, it's going to be expensive.
They wanted $1,400 for something that was supposed to be what I thought would be $500. Basically, I determined that it was a bearing in my front wheel. And in this case, it's a hub of bearings that needs to be replaced, but you got to take quite a few things apart and use torque wrenches. And I watched a guy do it on YouTube, thought about doing it myself. It cost me $2,100.
Oh, ouch.
They said that the sensor, the speed sensor in the ABS brakes on the wheel was seized, and you need to take that out. Now, when I watched the video, the guy said, don't forget to take out the ABS sensor or you'll break it. So I'm thinking those mother assholes broke it and charged me $600. And I couldn't find one for $600, Brian. As hard as I tried, the most expensive one I found was $250 American, which would be a little over $300 in our currency in Canada. And I found some for $25. I found a whole bunch for $25.
So do you think you should have attempted this yourself?
No. But I really hate auto mechanic shops. Really hate them.
Well, it's just so difficult to know. I mean, they can tell you really almost any price, and you kind of have to pay it. So what do you do?
I know. I mean, it's like I was losing sleep over it, and it was so angst. I just said, okay, I'm putting it on my credit card. I'll pay it off as I go, and there'll be interest, and this sucks. But yeah, that's what I have to do. Our government, our local government, sending us $500 at the end of November, or something like that for inflation, and I'll put that on it. Yeah. But I also have this kid going on this trip, and it was a bad time. However, as you were saying last week about your ceiling, you spent a lot of money on, you don't get anything for that.
No, and they're back today working on the other half. So again, you might hear some construction noise in the background.
Well, I am really thrilled because I forgot what my car was like before this problem slowly emerged like a frog in hot water. I've fallen in love with my car again, and I just love electric cars so much. And it's so quiet. You get up to like city speed and you start to hear the wind, and I don't hear anything else. I expect to hear something else, but all I'm hearing is a slight breeze. And this car does a really good job in sort of mitigating the air noise. So one of the channels I watch on YouTube is Out of Spec Reviews. I've been talking to our R&D department at the Clean Energy Show, possibly looking at a YouTube-related segment, what James saw on YouTube. We're talking about it. They're crunching the numbers and running some algorithms.
Oh, I can tell you what I saw on YouTube when I was in Vancouver.
Sure.
The ads a lot of them were from BC Hydro, their electric utility.
Yeah.
I kept getting BC Hydro ads on my YouTube, and it was things like, Hey, everybody, did you know BC Hydro is all like 98% carbon free and free, hydroelectric power, everybody. But it's a government monopoly, so I'm not really sure why they're advertising, but it was still interesting to see. And of course, the algorithm knew that was, I guess, an ad that I might be interested
And
in.
you were. And you've talked about BC Hydro on the show before.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's an automotive review channel I watch. Now, when I watch automotive review channels, it's to watch about EVs because that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in buying them. I'm interested in learning about them. And Out of Spec Reviews is a guy in just outside of Denver. He does all these reviews. I like him. I've grown accustomed to him. I trust him. He does a fairly honest review. So he decided, he's been having all these cars come out of his orbit, right? Lots of different cars. And he's always interested in cars, combustion and otherwise. Well, he decided to buy a Nissan LEAF. And he bought one, the cheapest one he could find in America. And it was $4,700, $3,700, something like that.
Wow.
And it had a dent in it, and the battery was bad, and the level 2 charger didn't work. Like the normal charger that you would charge at home didn't work.
So only the fast one.
Only the fast charger works. And it was an SL version, so it's the higher trim level. So it's got all the, it's got a solar panel that charges the battery, and not the battery, but the 12-volt battery.
The 12 volt.
Which is good to keep topped up in cars like that use, batteries for connectivity and stuff like that. And he's driven it for a couple of weeks, and here's a clip because he really likes it.
We spend a lot of our time evaluating cars on the bleeding edge of technology. For example, this week I've been driving the Model S Plaid, the Lucid Air Grand Touring, doing range testing and things like that, the Rivian R1T, the Mercedes EQE. That's all great. But I think also I'm just a fan of transportation in general. It doesn't need to be expensive bleeding edge transportation. Things like this can get the job done for most people, or for at least many use cases. I just wanted to tell you that for $3,750, I got reliable electric transportation that is actually really fun to drive. So I'm pretty pleased with this whole thing.
Yeah, he doesn't have to buy this crappy old car, which is now ancient in EV terms. It's 2 years older than mine. It's a 2011. He towed it in a Rivian. He was like, got a hold of a Rivian, so he went to Seattle to Denver towing this thing. And he's going to make a video about that as well. And, well, he's just quite happy with it, and you can see him driving around on his channel. So, yeah, I just really love the car, Brian.
No, and as we've said, though, it is a city car. You can't really expect to do road trips on it. But, of course, 99% of the time, you're just driving around town. And obviously, it works for you and for lots of people.
And because we're a 2-car family, actually 3 if you count our vacation vehicle that remains parked most of the year, we have the car that we can use for vacations. We are longer term. We just went to 2.5 hours, the kids in college type of thing. And we can make that trip several times a year, and any vacations we want to. And we don't have to worry. All our cars don't have to be highway worthy. And this car is doing such a great job and saving us a ton of money. And coming up on its 10th birthday, by the way, in January, we'll be celebrating that on the show.
Yeah, so I wanted to mention the Nissan Ariya then, which really is the follow-up to the Leaf. Like, Nissan had a huge head start in EVs with the Leaf, over 10 years ago. But it's taken them this long to
12
come
years,
up with
Brian, 12.
12
it's ridiculous.
And so they finally have a follow-up. It's the Ariya. And pricing has been announced. So you, as a Nissan Leaf driver, this might be the natural, car for you to upgrade to. But I don't know, might be out of your price range, 53,000 Canadian, and in the U.S. that's around 43 or 42, I think, as a starting price.
Yeah, well, it's almost 18,000 more than what I want to spend. So that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a large percentage, and it's not worth it. I don't think it's worth it. I've read the reviews, including Out of Spec reviews, by the way, and it just doesn't seem like the best value out there, because it's pretty close in price to, say, a Hyundai Ioniq 5, which charges very fast, like ridiculous, faster than anything but a Tesla, really, and Porsches and some things like that. But for most of the cars out there, like the Fords don't charge very fast. They've got this 800-volt architecture, and it charges fast. And Mike, my friend Mike, he's going to give me a test drive one of these days. Aren't you, Mike? And he's got one in town. But I also saw other people talking about you can't get one of those anymore for 2 or 3 years. Like, that's what they're being told. I don't know if it's a lie.
Right.
Because I don't trust dealers to tell the truth. I don't trust anyone. Yeah. And by the way, did you used to watch This Old House on PBS ever?
Oh, I love This Old House. I
don't know why I did, but I did. And, we used to have just a handful of channels, and one was that, and maybe there was nothing on, and I just fell into it. And, I've picked up some things and done my own, it's probably got me started on my own DIY projects and just that path in life.
Yeah, and they occasionally do cover things like energy efficiency, like insulation and heat pumps and stuff like that. So I still check them out on YouTube occasionally when they have stories about that, because, they'll be upgrading an old house and it's like, well, how do we bring it into the 21st century and make it, energy efficient?
But, I started watching with Bob Villa.
Bob Villa. Yeah.
I've forgotten his name. It's been 20 years since he's been on the air.
Yeah, he hasn't been on for decades.
But he started in the 70s, in the very late 70s, and all through the 80s. And, Saturday afternoon, you were bored, James. You kind of just turn on the TV and sort of fall into something. And, after all these years, they're doing EV chargers. I mean, I was dreaming about EVs when this show went on the air. And now they're talking about EV chargers.
Hey, Kevin. Electric vehicle charging, huh?
Yeah.
So in terms of safety, obviously this is the port where it goes when, the 17-year-old goes chasing the 14-year-old.
And wants to zap him.
Be able to zap him? Is that possible?
No.
No?
No. So this part is energized. When it comes out of here, it goes into the unit.
Just this cord here?
Just that cord. This piece, nothing.
Really?
Nothing at all until you plug it in. So it has two little pins inside that it wants to see contact the car. The car needs to know that it's made connection. Then this will send power through.
Yeah, you can stick your tongue on the end of my EV charger, the driveway. It's not turned on. It's got to communicate with the car. It's got to shake hands with the car and then throw a switch to send the power.
Okay, so they're advocating that people should lick their EV
chargers.
No,
I'm not saying that. Do not do this at home, kids. I'm just saying there's so much ridiculous speculation out there about like charging cars in the rain and things. Come on. It's not like I'm, taking a high voltage wire off of a transmission line and then, sticking it to my car with rubber gloves. It's all sealed and safe. Otherwise, and it's, of course, ground fault interrupted and all that. So that's the way EV chargers are. That's the way it has to be. And the straight pipes are friends over the straight pipes. We interviewed one of the straight pipers. Favorite channel of yours. They did the F-150 Lightning. Did you see that video they put up?
I did, yeah. That was a great review. I'm glad they finally got their hands on one.
Yeah, they did. But my point of this is that they got their hands on one. It wasn't given to them for a review. I was talking last week that I keep seeing these at dealerships, or at least listed at dealerships. It seems like, to your point about how many are you making and when are you making them, that Ford is sticking up and they're doing their thing. They're putting out these Mach-E's. They're putting out the F-150s. They're actually making them available.
Yeah, I've seen them listed on dealerships too. It tends to be the more expensive ones, so maybe they are having trouble selling those like super high priced ones. But we do expect EV prices to eventually come down, but unfortunately they are still pretty crazy expensive. We just talked about the Aria. It seems like it's really priced higher than it should be, but I think we're a year or two away from prices actually, finally starting to come down. But it should happen once supply increases.
Well, the straight pipes were really happy to find one.
And where did we get this F-150 Lightning from?
Meadowvale Ford, thank you guys so much for providing the car because we couldn't get one through Ford Canada.
If you're in Mississauga and you're looking for a Ford, only go there. They're going to have a bunch of Lightnings for you guys to buy.
Mississauga, Ontario, with a bunch of Lightnings to go buy. Now, these are longer range stuff, so it should be popular. People who can afford them.
Yeah. And last week, of course, you made a commercial for the Riverbend Co-op because they've been so nice about the charging infrastructure. So I guess this week it's the commercial for Meadowvale Ford.
Yeah, we're constantly get your free commercials here on the Clean Energy Show. Last night I got a DM from a mutual friend. We'll call him Trevor Aikman. That's his code name. Smart, thoughtful fellow. was fell into the FUD. He fell into somebody telling him, don't buy EVs because he's thinking about it. He was told by a friend not to because of the batteries, because the batteries are an environmental terrorism. And I don't know how to address that. I mean, people listening to the show have already seen the studies. There's been many. Yeah. Some of them have been less kind than others. But if you see a study that says batteries are bad or EVs are worse than gas cars, usually that study is not will to wheel. It just, the gas magically shows up in the car. And they tell you how the coal was made for the electricity, but they don't tell you how the gas was mined, shipped, transformed.
Shipped in a truck.
And, more energy than it takes to drive just to turn that into gasoline at the refinery and then shipped to you as well.
And there is, to be fair, a carbon footprint for making an electric car. So, you can't discount that argument entirely, but compared to a gasoline car, it's night and day. It's not even a discussion. EVs are just way better. I mean, the best thing to do is to walk, to ride a bicycle, to take public transport. I always like to throw that in there. But if you're going to buy a car, EV, way, way better.
Yeah. And I've said this a million times, and I'll say it again. If there was no climate problem, I'd still be jonesing for an EV because they're better.
Yeah.
They're better.
They're just better.
They're way better.
Yeah.
They're even better in cold weather. Like my Nissan LEAF is better in cold weather. I don't know about all cars, but my Nissan LEAF is just toasty warm and just a delight to drive in -40. Believe it or not. And then there's videos on our channel, on our YouTube channel to see that. So Clean Technica was talking about how Tesla is using approaches from other self-driving players that basically they haven't come up with everything themselves. They're using certain bits and pieces of technology from other people that have already been developed. Sometimes they say people think Tesla is doing much more original work than it may be doing. And what these other self-driving companies are doing is often underrated and underacknowledged. And I try to sort of balance that out on the show, that we don't hear a lot of talk about what the other people are doing, but they are doing it, and they are driving around, including that the trucks in Toronto to the grocery stores that you're talking about.
Yeah. No, Tesla tends to get the lion's share of publicity for this kind of stuff because anything to do with Tesla or Elon Musk seems to work well as a clickbait title headline. Sure. So it's true. And all kinds of things like battery storage as well. They're not the only ones doing that. There was a story about CATL recently that like their profits are starting to go through the roof at CATL.
I have that somewhere in the script, Brian. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's you think that you think batteries aren't going places when they're already making profits like that? Come on.
Yeah. Batteries are the new oil.
So the Clean Technica give an example of third-party city visualizations. This is just a slightly modified Houdini city generator developed by Epic Games for the Matrix Awakened demo. Available for free, by the way. Tesla just integrated their auto-labeled HD map. There's nothing proprietary other than the 3D assets, catching up to where others were years ago in that regard.
Yeah. Well, this is always the exciting thing about technology is that, I don't know, it just seems to get faster and faster because all these tools get developed. It's just going to speed up from here. Okay, so we got a story here about fusion energy, which we don't talk about very often. But fusion is kind of the opposite of fission, which is what most nuclear power plants work on now. Fusion is potentially a much safer energy source, but I don't know. So far, no one's been able to make it work. Yeah, so this is happening in the UK. They've chosen a site for this fusion energy prototype, and the UK government is backing it to the tune of £220 million. And they're hoped to have a concept design ready by 2024, followed by a phase 2 that has detailed engineering design. I don't know, phase 3, and I don't know, not targeting operations until the early 2040s. So this is a ways away. I'm always fascinated by fusion because it is like the potential is incredible. But I don't know, that, as we like to say on the show here, that £220 million from the UK government They could have just bought some solar panels for that and some batteries. and
Yeah. You know, and those are available. They're picking a coal power plant as a site. Is that true for this fusion?
Yeah. So I assume it's for the same reasons that they often do that kind of thing, is that all of the grid infrastructure would already be there on the site. So this is a coal plant that's no longer in use. And so they figured this would be a great place to put this fusion system that may never work. I don't know.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to save the planet if the best case scenario is 2040s. So Bloomberg, good old people at Bloomberg, they're always on top of all the stories that we are interested in, have stated that they've studied it, and EV chargers outnumber gas stations 10 to 1 in Manhattan. That is the island of Manhattan in New York City, where real estate is tough, so it's not easy to put up a gas station, but it's actually not that hard to put up a charger. You know, you can put one in a parking garage, and God knows there's enough of those. So New York's most densely populated borough has 320 charging stations and just 29 gas stations. The ChargePoint CEO was telling Bloomberg that the growing popularity of EVs will kill off the remaining gas stations fairly quickly. I don't think you need to go far up the electric vehicle adoption curve to see gas stations deforested in that is to say, wiped out of Manhattan. It's a question of when. So, yeah, crippling property prices have a lot to do with that. But like I've said on the show, Brian, many times, I predict it's going to be hard to buy gas. We're going to switch from it's being hard to charge an EV to it's hard to buy gas because they're not terribly profitable.
And it's going to happen in a place like Manhattan first because, of course, everything is so dense and the property is so valuable. It's going to be just too expensive to spend all that money just for a gas station. No one's going to want to do it. And already it's not great if there's only 29 gas stations in Manhattan.
Well, New Yorkers as a whole shouldn't worry, they say, because there are still more gas stations than EV chargers across the 5 boroughs. There are 697 gas stations dotted across the city. But there's 520 electric vehicle charging stations, so they're going to surpass them pretty quick, I would think.
Yeah, and I assume that probably includes like some like level 2 kind of charging sites as well, not necessarily all fast ones.
It does. And most of the borough's gas stations are located north of Central Park. Did you know that? I didn't.
No.
I guess that's the place to go if you're looking for gas. If you find yourself in Manhattan looking for gas, head towards Central Park. There are very few chargers above 110th Street for some reason. So most of these charging stations are found in parking garages. You know, cabs will be going and have started to go EV in New York City, and that trend will continue. So the cab stations or parking lots or headquarters or whatever you want to call them are going to have lots of potentially fast, like, you know, the $200,000, 50 kilowatt type of EV chargers going in. So we'll see how that goes. They're set to grow these numbers in the coming years, they say, especially as the government plans to deploy more chargers across the country. You know, Biden and his charger program. It's crazy, but I read people on Facebook saying all the things that people say to them, like the federal government is paying for you to charge your EV for free, things like that. There's so much crap out there. I don't know what to do about it, Brian. I mean, not everybody's going to listen to our show. They should, obviously.
Yeah, so you're thinking the podcast just isn't enough.
It's not enough. We have to have T-shirts, skywriting. I don't know, something big.
You can run for prime minister.
Well, we need to educate people. I've never had the indication that our prime minister knows what an EV is. I don't think he's ever driven one.
Yeah. Okay, well, speaking of chargers, the one thing we're still kind of waiting to hear more about are the kind of the Tesla mega chargers for their Tesla semi-truck. And of course, there'll be an equivalent for other brands as well. But there was some news on that front. So finally, production has officially started on the Tesla semi-truck. Pepsi is going to get delivery of the first trucks on December 1st of this year. So they're very close. But I'm really interested in the charging infrastructure part of this story because we've only heard about a couple of Tesla mega chargers, which is their brand name for the charging stations that'll charge these trucks, which presumably need a lot more power than a car. So these mega chargers can supply more power. But I assume we'll hear more on December 1st. I'm assuming Pepsi is going to maybe use them at first on some specific route, and they must already be building chargers for either end or something like that. But we'll just keep an eye on the story because, there's massive potential in transferring, the trucking industry to electric. It's going to be a big, big deal. The trucking industry creates a lot of our pollution.
What is your spec prediction for the Tesla Semi Supercharger, Megacharger rather?
Well, I can't recall the numbers, but it's going to have to be, 2 or 3 times faster than the car chargers, I would assume.
I think that it'll come in under 350 kilowatts, which is existing technology, and they'll have 3 of them.
Yeah.
The battery pack will be split into 3 or 4, and you put on 3. You're a trucker, you're on the job, you're not a guy on vacation, going to the bathroom or the gas station washroom. You're just going to plug in 3 things and then walk away, which is, you can do that with diesel, but it's not that easy. I mean, it's a little scary. You can't light a cigarette. You got to kind of make sure everything's going okay.
No, we should get more information soon. And I also just quickly want to mention another story that was on Electrek this week, written by Jameson Dow. And the headline of the story is, I took a 2,200-mile electric road trip with no preparation. What's the big deal? So this is a Tesla that he took on a 2,200-mile road trip, kind of at the spur of the moment. And I just wanted to mention it because he sort of came up with a new way of talking about the charging time. Because on this big trip, 2,200 miles, he said they only spent 25 minutes waiting for the car to charge. And what he means by that is anytime they stopped and they were having a meal, for instance, and the car is charging, they didn't count that time. He only counted the time where all they were doing was waiting for the car to charge. And I thought that was a really clever way to do it. So obviously it would have been 2 or 3 hours worth of charging, but only 25 minutes of that was them actually waiting for the car to finish charging, because the rest of it is kind of like free time. It's like, well, you have to eat anyway. Mm-hmm. You have to go to the washroom anyway. So, why would you count that as charging time? So only 25 minutes of waiting for a 2,200-mile road trip.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Another way I would do it is, because I make a certain trip, say to Calgary, which is a day-long trip, I know where I stop and how long I take. And I just add time onto that. How much more time is it? And, 25 minutes for money and convenience of an electric car is not that bad. And plus, smell the flowers once in a while. Plus, it's only going to get better. I mean, that 25 minutes is going to be eradicated with, technology that'll be on the street less than 5 years from now, I'm sure, if not even now. So,
yeah, for sure. All right, so some more automotive news here. So just a couple of weeks ago, Porsche Group split itself off from the Volkswagen Group as a separate IPO and is on the stock market. It took a bit of a dip right after the IPO, but it sort of climbed back up again. So Porsche is now valued at 84 billion euros, making it technically worth more than Volkswagen itself. So I don't know if that trend is going to continue or not, but I think there's some excitement around this because of the Porsche Taycan. It's, not a perfect car by any means, but people love driving Porsches.
Perfect enough for me. I'd take one. I wouldn't kick it out of bed.
No,
it's a good looking car.
It's a great looking car. Performance is excellent. So, so I think, the high valuation is indicative of the hopes for that. I think that the electrification of Porsche is going to go well. Ferrari is also another kind of example to look at. Ferrari went public a few years ago as a way to kind of raise money for the brand, and that's done really well for Ferrari. It's a smaller player, and they make fewer things, but they make good profits. Like Ferrari makes money on every car. And so I think that's the hope, is that the electrification, there's maybe some synergies with a brand like Ferrari. This worked for Ferrari. So, this is what's going on with Porsche, making it one of the most valuable companies in Europe at this point.
As an investor, have you considered it?
No, I'd have to do a little bit more research and kind of see how this shakes out. But
the Clean Energy Show does not provide investment advice. No. Gambling advice, yes. Sports gambling, that sort of thing, come right to us.
Sure.
Elon Musk, pray or slay.
I feel, Brian, like we lose listeners when I criticize Elon Musk. But you have to talk about him because he's running the world now. He's left Tesla, which is your retirement depends on, I'll remind you.
Yeah.
And he's doing all these stupid things like supposedly talking to Putin about world peace, although he denied it today. But, there was someone who came, a news organization that said that he was. And the whole Kanye thing and anti-Semitism and, well, not directly, but I'm counting the days until Elon Musk says, something really, really bad that's going to be hard for even you to take.
Yeah. Well, there's a list on Wikipedia of like the top 50 Twitter accounts, like, the top Twitter accounts, and the many followers. And of course, Musk is getting up there very close to the top 50 million followers or something. But I don't know. He's like the only one on the list that's a troll, and a certain U.S. president is still on the list, even though his Twitter account is no longer active. And so if he was still on Twitter, then there'd be two trolls on that list. But I don't know. Sometimes you just can't feed the trolls, James.
No, and maybe we are now, but I predict bad things. That he's going to own Twitter, and he's going to put unpleasant people on there that I don't want to be back on. There's going to be some terrible things said that I don't want to be said. And, large swaths of human beings are being targeted, and I don't know how they feel. As a white male, I get a free ride on most of this stuff, but I mean, come on.
It's a very weird thing because, of course, a lot of people think of it as a free speech issue, that you shouldn't kick anyone off Twitter because everyone's deserving free speech. But like, you have free speech on the street in your hometown. Everybody's kind of allowed to do what they want, but not in a shopping mall. Like, a shopping mall is a private enterprise. It's a private business. You don't have free speech when you're in a shopping mall. And really, Twitter, Facebook, all these things, they're more like a shopping mall than they are like the actual public square. So I've always found that debate kind of weird because, of course, you can't have people saying anything you want on Twitter because it's nauseating and you'll revolt your customers.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not looking forward to the future. I should be, but I'm not, So let's get to a segment of what James learned. The intro to this segment was lost at a computer crash of 6 months ago.
Oh, no.
So we'll just have to imagine it in your mind. I learned this week, Brian, that power lines during outage events where they have one thing goes down and power lines, more power has to go through the lines that exist, that when they reach 80% of their capacity and above, which happens in these events, then they get warm. And when they get warm, they don't start on fire, but they expand. And then that allows them to sag down the longer they are and hit a tree and short out and cause more power outages.
Wow.
So I was looking into the power outage of 2003. Were you in Toronto for that?
I was. That was crazy where the whole East Coast went out.
Yeah. Was it? Did you have a night of darkness in Toronto?
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember how long it lasted, but I was working on a film at the time. We were making an animated film in this studio down the street from me. And we'd done a power tap into sometimes when you make a film, you can tap into the power lines and bypass the power box in the house.
Okay.
If you need more power. So we thought we had caused the blackout.
Oh, how would you possibly do that? I don't understand.
Well, we had just done it and the power went out. It was closely enough related in time.
Maybe you should stop speaking right now. Breaking news, Brian Stockton causes the great power outage. You know, it cost them $10 billion. How do you go to a power line and bypass things? Like how?
Well, power comes from the power line into the house, and then it goes into your, like the power meter and your breaker box.
Yes.
So when you're a film production, you can bypass all that when you need more power.
Well, wouldn't that kill you? You can't just, you're not climbing a pole for your animated film.
Well, you have to have, like a registered electrician do it, but it is possible.
And did you need more power for your animated film? It's an animated film.
Well, this is the old days when we had, big movie lights, and we did. We needed lots of power.
There was no LEDs.
No, this was 2003. This was forever
Movie
ago.
lights are now LED for the most part, and you can change the color and do things like that. And yeah, you don't have to worry about, because even in film school, you're worrying about killing breakers, you'd blow breakers all the time and the fridge would go out and people would be mad when you're shooting at their house.
Yeah, because when, you certainly, like most of the breakers in houses in North America, that, like 2,000 watts is about the biggest that you can power off your breaker box. But the movie lights are typically going to be more than 2,000 watts, so you got to bypass the breaker box.
So you were too busy. You don't remember being outside.
Well, yeah, we were in.
I just wondered what it was like because, Toronto, you never get to see the stars, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we probably could see the stars. I don't quite recall.
But, the news footage is people were on the streets because it was a hot night and they were talking to each other and socializing in ways. And they didn't know Facebook was coming and all that stuff. So, it was before those days. But even then, we were starting to sort of, post 9/11, not talk to each other anymore.
It was mostly kind of fun from what I remember. Like there wasn't any like widespread looting or anything. So it was just kind of a cool event that everyone could share.
I'm not sure I wouldn't loot right now just to make up for my car expenses. Anyway, we debuted a new segment last week called The Tweet of the Week. Yeah, I like certain tweets that really stand out to me during my week on Twitter, which may come to an end. We'll see. So this is from Carbon Tracker, which I highly recommend, with talk of solar panels and farmland, because, Brian, as you know, the new Prime Minister of the UK says that she doesn't like all the solar panels on farmland taking away from farmland. So that's raised an issue with the right.
It's because she's dumb.
Dumb. With talk of solar panels and farmland, a reminder, the land required for solar panels alone to provide all the global energy, like everything, cars, trucks, heat, everything, with just solar panels and nothing else, is 0.3% of the global land area, or 450,000 square kilometers, 500,000 kilometers of solar panels with current technology. By the way, they're getting better. They'll need less land in the future, we figure. So but here's the thing. That sounds like a lot, not a lot to save the planet, but it's less than the current land footprint of fossil fuel infrastructure. So all these oil people who will come up to you and say, because I heard this from my son, because he heard it from other people, so he repeated it to me. How much land is solar going to take up? How much, there's a pipeline by my house goes on for hundreds of kilometers. I mean, hundreds.
No, there's a huge field behind your house and nothing can be built on it because
the golfers can't even live there because they poison them.
Yeah.
So, the golfers would much prefer solar panels. I guarantee you. They live in the shade, eat the grass, have a fence around them. They'd love a solar farm. In fact, if I came back as a gopher, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find me a solar farm and go live there.
Be beautiful.
So we like to hear from you. Contact us at the Clean Energy Show. So we are on Gmail, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. We're on Twitter. We're on TikTok, where we have videos blowing up as we speak. And our handle there is Clean Energy Pod. That's Twitter and TikTok. You can also DM us on Twitter or anywhere you like. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, The Clean Energy Show, or leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/Clean Energy Show. And we had a SpeakPipe voicemail last week, and I said that we would read the guy's birthday, Sean in Ireland, in was it Dublin or Belfast? I can't remember.
Dublin. Not sure.
Dublin, Belfast. Damn it, Ireland. It's probably a huge difference. He's getting mad at us right now. But I'm thinking, of course he doesn't want his birthday on the show. I mean, what are they going to do? His mother's maiden name too? Or are you just going to give out personal information to the masses? Of course not.
Yeah.
So well, happy birthday, whenever it is. So Brian's the second anniversary of the lightning round. So let's get retro.
The Clean Energy Show Lightning Round. The lightning round hits James against Brian in a flurry of headlines from this week's news. Let's begin here now. James Woodingham.
You remember this? It used to be a contest. There'd be buzzers. If you didn't respond with some sort of a reply. Remember the good old days, Brian? Remember them?
Yeah, the good old days. Yeah.
So here we go. We mentioned this earlier. CATL expects a net profit of $1.37 billion in the third quarter. That's a net.
So just in the third quarter.
This is a net profit. Net.
Yeah.
Profit.
Yeah.
Batteries. No, they're going to shriek away and not build 10 million more gigafactories. Come on, people. Carbon Tracker says that UK gas imports would be 13% lower if successive conservative-led governments had not, quote unquote, cut the green crap over the past decade. So yeah, if we praised Boris for doing a few good things and supporting wind, but ultimately they did cut a lot of green crap, as they called it. But now, if they hadn't done that, 13% lower imports of gas from Russia. And just overall 13% less if they hadn't done that, but they did. So you're wrong to do that. It's just wrong. Inside EVs, the Nissan LEAF sales noted the worst third quarter ever. You know why?
Why?
I'm going to guess why. The Nissan LEAF doesn't compete anymore, for one thing. It doesn't have liquid cooling. You can't, charge the battery 3 times on the highway consecutively. You can't use it in Arizona without worry of degradation. And people who are loyal to the Nissan brand have the area to buy. So they're buying that. They're not buying the LEAF. So there was only 1,276 LEAF sales. That's almost 46% less than in Q3 of last year and the lowest third quarter result ever. Remember when Carlos Ghosn,
yeah. Carlos
he's now
Ghosn.
in jail in Spain or somewhere?
Yeah, I've lost track of that story, but
yeah, he was corrupt.
Didn't he have to get out of Japan in a crate or something?
Yeah. It was
on a
interesting.
plane?
It was interesting. He snuck himself out of Japan, but he started the program and said we're going to sell millions of them. Or at the very, this is in the documentary "Who Killed the Electric Car" or the Revenge of the Electric Car, the follow-up documentary. He said that, but then he also said that, well, we'll be ready if EVs take off. Well, they're kind of not. With two offerings that are not huge value propositions. And like, how is the Aria going to compare to the Chevrolet Equinox, which is $30,000 US? How is it going to compare? Now, it's a pretty stripped bare bones unit probably you're getting for $30,000, but that's a big price difference. Like, it's not even, the size is complementary. It's pretty much the same. So the LEAF shares of Nissan's total volume has decreased to 0.9% of all Nissans sold, which is not good at all. Yeah, for old time's sake, that's for not saying anything.
Thank you.
From Reuters, nuclear power is looking extremely expensive compared to renewable energy. And the cost of generating solar ranges from $36 to $44 per megawatt hour, while onshore wind power comes in at $29, a little bit less, to $56 per megawatt hour. Nuclear, $112 to $189. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's not competitive at all.
Greta Thunberg was on a show getting interviewed today asking about nuclear, and she says, no, if it exists, that's a good idea. Don't shut it down. Shutting down's a bad idea, especially if you're replacing it with coal, which they are, but
the wisdom of the youth.
Yes, that's 4 times as much right now, and the difference is going to widen. From EcoWatch, the growth in wind and solar in the first half of 2022 prevented a 4% increase in fossil fuel generation.
Yeah, so we tend to need more power every year, but this year it was completely offset by the renewables that were created. So that's fantastic.
It is fantastic, isn't it? Fast fact. It's time for a clean energy show. Fast fact. Solar energy and wind energy generated more than 10% of Ontario's total electricity supply in 2021. 10%, Brian. 10.
Yeah.
That's solar and wind. We're not talking hydro here. Just solar and wind. 10%.
The Ontario grid is pretty clean.
It's getting there. It's getting there. The world's largest offshore wind farm is going to get even larger and will provide enough electricity to power 21% of all UK homes with a 5 gigawatt output. That's like 5 nuclear reactors. So yeah, the wind farm, the biggest one in the world, is off the coast of the UK, and it's going to get even bigger. And so 1 in 5, more than 1 in 5 homes can be powered by wind. Just like that. And we're not talking about
amazing.
2040. We're talking about right now. This is crazy. Shell is the new official partner for the next 8 years for British cycling. And a lot of people, Brian, are not happy about it. They are sponsoring they just call it British Cycling, but it's a cycling association for sports cycling. And they don't see it as a good brand fit.
No.
And everybody else who might want to sponsor British cycling is running away, so that's not good. Canadian doctors are exposing a blatant greenwashing attempt by Canada Gas Association. This is the commercials that we have to watch on cable news in Canada. They are filing a $10 million complaint against an ad campaign promoting natural gas as clean, affordable, sustainable energy. How is it sustainable? Sorry to wake you up there, but what the hell? That's clean? Where do they get these things from? How is natural gas clean?
Cleaner than coal. That's
cleaner than coal. Sure. Well, we're not living in, 1800s London. This is, come on. When gas is worse than coal and it pollutes the air, the water, the lungs with carcinogens, why are they doing this? Why?
Yeah.
That's from the energy mix. To reach net zero emissions by 2050 and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, investment in renewable energy sources must surpass finance flows to fossil fuels by a factor of 4 over the next decade, says BNEF, Bloomberg New Energy Finance. So, yeah, I can see it happening naturally anyway. Do you have any argument with that it's going to happen that way?
No, that sounds about right.
From Professor Peter Strachan, solar energy saved Europeans $29 billion this summer. Solar alone, $29 billion through all of Europe because of cheaper electricity.
Yeah, and of course, there's been very high energy prices in Europe this summer. So without the solar, it would have cost everybody $29 billion more.
And Brian, that's a lot of money. I don't care how much Tesla stock you have. You have to admit, $29 billion is a lot of money, and it's about 29 times what I need. So we found out from the floods in Florida that Teslas automatically open their windows and doors if there's water detected inside the car. Did you see that story?
No, I didn't.
Apparently, cars that got flooded popped open the doors and windows. But they've rumored to have this feature for 10 years. Audi and Porsche are also rumored to have had this safety feature for a while. Now, here in Saskatchewan, we drive along farm roads, and then we look at our cell phone, roll the car, and end up in a dugout, which is a pond made for the farm of water.
Yeah.
And people drown. It happens every year.
Yeah.
And some people, in fact, carry special tools for breaking their window because you can't open the door to the car. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The door won't open because of the difference in pressure until your car is filled completely with water. And by then it's like, if this doesn't work, you're dead. So there's even been a story of somebody who carried one of those tools and actually ended up using it a couple of years ago and got out that way. And my wife bought something at Costco, these flashlights, because our son's on the highway a lot, bought him that and has one of those tools built in, for if he breaks down or something like that. He's already used it once. Yeah, that's interesting that they would do that. And it seems like all cars, that's a great safety feature because that's something that I actually think about and we thought about with our kids.
Yeah. So it reduces the pressure so that you should be able to, even though there's going to be water rushing in, you should be able to then open the door and get out.
And sometimes, it's different if you have, nobody has a manual window anymore, the ones that you crank. But the idea is that these will do that, and the water is detected inside the car, not outside the car, by the way. Siemens has set a record with their SG14 offshore wind turbine prototype. So I'm assuming that's 14 megawatts, the SG14, and that's why it has 14 in it. The turbine has produced 359 megawatt hours within a 24-hour time period. That is the most power one turbine has ever produced over this duration, and that is enough energy to drive in an EV 1.8 million kilometers made from one turbine in one 24-hour period, 1.8 million kilometers of driving a mid-sized electric car.
That's a lot.
And finally this week, we are all amazed by the prospect of Tesla owners waking up to a better car thanks to over-the-air updates. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
We have, there is a thing where you get over-the-air updates on a Tesla. It hooks to your Wi-Fi in your home. It updates the software like say your phone operating system would update overnight. Yep. And sometimes you have better cars. Sometimes you have better performance. Like they'll unleash more of the battery to you, or more of the 0 to 60 time has got a point shaved off of it, or something like that. Well, they're doing.
Yeah, I get them all the time, and it's great.
They're doing this with an e-bike. Okai has released an over-the-air performance update for their Ranger e-bike. So that must be an expensive e-bike if it's got over-the-air updates. But apparently, it is a 50% performance boost thanks to over-the-air updates. So that's just amazing.
Well, maybe they can get around regulations that way because there's regulations in certain places about the amount of power. So you could sell it at one particular power level, and then you just crank it up later.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That's our time for this week. We're going to leave you now, but we'll be back again next week. We love to hear from you. Again, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Send us an email right now. Let us know what you're thinking. Twitter, TikTok, Clean Energy Pod. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, etc., etc. If you're new to the show, and I know you are, some of you, subscribe to the podcast so you get our show every week because we're here every damn week, Brian. We're there. We're there for our people. So subscribe to the podcast app and get them every week. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next week.